Zoom great. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I'm a minute or so early. I appreciate you taking the time here just before 10 o'clock in the morning to share your day with me. We are, it looks like I'm now going to have to stall. There we go. Okay, now we're at 10 o'clock. All right. Okay. I love doing these things. I tell you, I have so much fun. And thank you. Thank you all for being here. I so appreciate the value of your time. Robert, good to see you again. So we are at the Greater San Diego Association of Realtors, and my name is Kevin Burke, and there's my telephone number, and there's my email address. And I'd really rather speak with you, but again, chances are that I'm doing something that's going to keep me from answering the telephone. But you can call me anytime. Hi, Mer. Yeah, I want to speak with you. I really do. So if you can't make contact, then please send me an email. Let's set up a time for doing that. Okay. So anyway, thank you again. I have some credentials that I guess make me qualified to speak about the subject matter. It's interesting. I got my real estate license back in 1979. And of course, back then, the internet existed. It just wasn't available for the public. It was being used widely already used by our government. But I've been a broker. I'm a broker in several. I have a broker's license in several states. And I do continue to teach attorneys real property law. So one of my specialties is understanding real estate. On the right-hand side, you can see all the risk management stuff. And next year, I'm going to add chair of the legal affairs forum. So for the California Association of Realtors. So, my little list, I'm going to have to start going with smaller font. But anyway, and that's it. On the lower right-hand corner, I've got the Lone Wolf Customer Advisory Board. So whenever somebody's having an issue with ZipForms, ZipForms was purchased, ZipLogix actually was purchased by Lone Wolf back a couple of years ago now. CAR made a deal with NAR, and NAR turned around and kicked it up to Lone Wolf. And I can assure you, I was in a meeting in a Lone Wolf Customer Advisory Board meeting in New York in Times Square right before COVID, actually. And it was interesting how they had this puzzle up on the board that said, this was the piece that we've been missing and the piece that we wanted. And so now we have ZipLogix, a separate independent company running the ZipForms program, Canadian based too, by the way. So now they show an address, of course, of Dallas, Texas, but they're really out of Canada. So good people. I mean, good people. And the head of the program, when I send an email to support, he gets a copy and everybody starts running. So if you have a problem with anything, if you'll please let me know, anything in the ZipForms platform, let me know, and maybe I can help you resolve it fairly quickly. So we're probably going to be talking about stuff that's going to appear to be legal. I am not a practicing attorney. I always like to make that clear in the very beginning. My trial work, which I do quite a bit of, is limited to testifying as an expert witness. Standard of care is my specialty. Did the agent do what they were supposed to be doing? Did they meet their standard of care? Seller standard of care as well, by the way. Agents' duties of inspection and disclosure, and finally market conditions, at least in San Diego County. And so I get, when I try to get a pulse on the market, I get different feedback from different people. And I guess most real estate agents attribute the market to, however they are doing in the market at the time. And so I want to encourage you that the market is what you make it to be. I've been in this business for over 44 years, and I've never seen. I've been in the middle of 44 major changes in economy, and none of them impacted my business. So hopefully you're doing well, and if you're not, please, let me know how I can help you. Stephanie, welcome back. Let me know how I can help you, because, I want you to do well. I always say, if you look good, you make me look good. So, I really do want you to look good. So conversation today, not intended as a substitute for the advice of your broker, nor for that of your attorney. Please consult with them as appropriate. I never want to get in front of your broker, and clearly not in front of your attorney. But you can always have them call me if they have a question about something. Let me see here, my guest today, Okay, so webinars are intended to be interactive, so I really am counting on hearing from you. So please utilize the Q&A button. Some of you know that when we first started doing these, I tried to make it go hot mic all the time, but then somebody would mute themselves when they weren't speaking. But then the problem was that that the Zoom program would automatically just kind of bring them back in again. And so, sometimes at the most awkward times. So please utilize the Q&A button to ask questions, to offer input. I do look forward to hearing from you because you help me to know what struggles you're having maybe with the program. But my goal today is to make you productive, hopefully. So we're going to talk about how to create a ZipForms template, otherwise known as how to create the award-winning DRE compliant ZipForms template. And then this afternoon, I'll be back to do the top 10 risk avoidance techniques. We're going to do an afternoon session of this. And we always have a lot of fun in that one. So Tuesday, we're going to talk about the changes to the RPA. And so we changed it again in June. Only one change. It wasn't a big deal, but it was a big change back in December of 22, right? So and then on Tuesday afternoon, I love talking about the new buyer representation agreement. And I'm going to tell you, folks, get good at this because this is the future. I was in a high-level meeting at NAR last week. The big brokers across the country and big ones in California. And we were that close from making the use of the buyer representation agreement the law. It is the law in other states, and I teach in Virginia, for example. I'm a certified DPOR instructor there, and as of July 1st of last year, it was a law. You had to use the buyer representation agreement, and part of that is because our buyers were going unrepresented. Even if they had somebody that they thought was representing them, they were going unrepresented because they didn't have a contract with them. So it saves you a lot of trouble. You'll see changes in Bright MLS, which is the Eastern Seaboard, just changed their MLS to state that there was no bottom to compensation. So they used to have a penny as the minimum compensation, but then of course the law says there is no minimum, there is no maximum. That is a Sherman antitrust violation. And so they changed their rules and now it's 0. And that just took effect on the 9th of this month. So what was that? Yesterday. So that rule is a hard rule in place already. So be aware. I have people call me all the time complaining about how much commission they're being paid out of the MLS. And I'm going to tell you, in our office, we haven't worried about it for many years. So because the buyer agrees to compensate us, and that's just going to be the trend on where things are going. So so be aware. I think that's going to be a good class. So again, that'll be Tuesday afternoon. I'm very excited about that, and we're going to cover a lot of points there. Okay, so member benefits, and that's what this is all about. SDAR, providing a member benefit, a free benefit, by the way. And I want to thank you for joining us. How to create an award-winning DRE compliant template in ZipForms, and I want to cover a bunch of that. So what is a DRE compliant template? Well, a DRE compliant template is one which clearly displays your affiliation with your brokerage. And I know the Department of Real Estate goes after individuals who advertise themselves. I know we all, it's all about us. We're the big, I had a guy one time in a transaction says, I run a team, right? And I went, well, goody. And so, but you're doing it wrong. It's okay with me. I mean, you do whatever you want to do. You check with your broker. They were not the broker, by the way. And so they made it look like they were the broker. And so the Department of Real Estate is going after people that aren't displaying their affiliation with their brokerage. And so, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to show you how to do it. So that's a NAR and a DRE requirement. NAR requires it in the Code of Ethics, right? And that you must display your affiliation with a brokerage. And the DRE requires it clearly. I think we're more afraid of the DRE than we are of NAR, but I don't know. I'm not afraid of either one of them. I think they're both wonderful organizations. So it'll also include the DRE numbers of both you and your brokerage, okay? And so I'm going to show you how to set that up. So this is also known as I really want to be sure that I have a consistently good file.
And why do I say that? Because we are in a systems business. We are in a rote business. We do the same things again and again and again. I know, people ask me all the time, why don't we have a timeline of events for a real estate transaction? And the answer is because, you walk in the door, hi, how are you? And then you don't know what's going to happen after that, right? It can go anywhere. Okay. Well, that's the good part about it, is creating a good foundation for what you want that to look like. And I'm going to show you how we've done that. And hopefully that will help you to understand that it's not that complicated. So anyway, I want to have a systematically good file. And I always want to make sure that I am using the current versions of the forms. And we're going to talk about how that's easy to do as well. Okay, so I had an offer from, our agents send me offers to review before they go out. And one of our brokers, who's been a broker for, he was my student back decades ago. And I get, one to review from him, and it had the old DA form in it. Most of you don't know what the DA was, the disclosure and consent for representation of more than one buyer or seller. So it was the precursor to the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. And so we replaced it back in 2012. So there it was in the offer. And I go, where did you get that? So essentially they were copying transactions. And so obviously not the current form, obviously not the current protection that we need. So, but we'll talk about how to fix that as well. Okay. So if you don't, then you're putting your clients at risk big time, because when we update the forms, we are updating them so that they are compliant with current legislation, as well as responding to litigation. And I think at any time in history, and in all the years, I started out with a 1-page purchase agreement, and today we have a 16-page purchase agreement. And I can tell you that in all of my years, I think that this is the best time where we are closer to parity between the buyer and the seller, and closer to distancing us from the transaction and making us more of a facilitator. And in some states where I teach, they don't even call them the buyer's agent, as a facilitator. So you put your clients at risk, you put your broker at risk, and let's not do that. Listen, we love our broker. We want to make sure that our broker is protected. Our broker's Linda. I love Linda. I want to make sure Linda sleeps at night without having any issues. God knows I sleep well at night, but that's because I do the same thing. I treat everybody equally. And if I'm treating everybody equally, then I avoid some of the pitfalls, fair housing issues, things like that. And so I really just, try to come from a position of kindness. So, but you're also putting yourself at risk. And so listen, you worked hard to get your real estate license. I think if I ask anybody, do you want to do it again? I remember asking Wayne Bell, who was our previous commissioner, and I said, yeah, will you authorize me to take the broker's test again? Because I hadn't taken it so many years. And he says, sure, Kev, not a problem. He says, just let your license expire for 2 years. And I go, hold it, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not willing to do that. I'd love to take it again. And I think the next round that's coming up, I'm actually going to be on the task force at the Department of Real Estate for creating the state exam. That's what they're doing right now, is recreating the state exam, because it's just old. I mean, it's 10, 15, 20 years old. So anyway, so Wayne's comment was a funny one. I said, I'm not going to let my license expire. I'm not going to let it go 2 years, clearly, because I'd like to take it again. But remember, it's actually against the law to take the state exam again without cause. And so if you have a license and you go to take it again, you're going to lose your license. It's just not worth it. So I have a lot of these conversations with people. So you also won't have the benefits of CAR's user protection agreement. And so for whatever that's worth. And so for those of you on the call today, what that means is that if you get involved in a lawsuit over the pre-printed language, then CAR will defend you, which means that they will do an amicus brief, which is it's called a friend of the court. They'll write a letter on your behalf at the appellate level. So but I listen, I've never seen, have I ever seen a lawsuit over the pre-printed language? I mean, we're constantly updating these forms, and so I haven't seen any lawsuits over the pre-printed language. The cases I get involved in to defend are the are what you put into the contract. I had a fascinating counteroffer come over to one of our agents the other day, and the agent was meticulous about, stacking everything, referencing paragraphs and all that. It looked kind of like a computer did it. So nice job. It's something I would have probably done, but done it in a word wrap type of fashion. But this scares the buyer, when we do stuff like that. And I know because I did it for the same buyer previously when we were countering a counter offer from a seller, and they just freaked out. And so it's like, okay, so now I know I don't want to do that. I don't want to look too lawyer-like or too technical-like. Okay, so but anyway, the user protection agreement, for whatever it's worth, I'm sure that they do a great job at that, because CAR does do a great job, but I've never seen it in play. So maybe I'll get more of that with a legal affairs forum. I've been on legal affairs now for 15, 20 years, so a long time. So now I get to actually chair it, which is kind of cool. So, all right, okay. So look at the headers and the footers. That's going to be important. So I'm going to pull up really fast. So whenever you pull up a form, so here are my forms. Let's take a look at the buyer. These are the templates, by the way. These are our templates. I have a template for everything. Okay. Seller listing, buyer offer. Let's take a look at buyer offer template really quick, and I'm going to pull up let's pull up a form. Let's see, let's pull up specifically the RPA. So I'm going to pull up the RPA, and here's the two things I'm looking for. First of all, I'm looking at the top of the form. This is the agency disclosure. It was revised in December of 21. It was, some of you know that it was also revised in October of 18, but it hadn't had a revision in decades. And so we actually had the legislative document, the Civil Code 2079, we actually had it changed in order to be able to do that. Okay. And so sellers, some of you recall, seller's agent was listing agent, buyer's agent was selling agent, and the DRE loved that, right? Because it was so confusing. Even we didn't understand it half the time, because I would teach it because I was teaching the crash course for the state exam, and it was like, I just made the analogy, I put it up on the board so that people would have a visual, but we changed it so it made sense. It's in common, it's in plain English, as we say. And again, remember, if the client doesn't understand what they're signing, then there is no meeting of the minds, there is no contract. Okay, so let's take a look. When I look at the purchase agreement, and in here I look at 1222. Okay, so 1222 was the last revision. Now I told you that they had a revision for the agreement in June, but it appears to me that they haven't implemented it. So we're going to go down to paragraph 11, which is where the change is, or 12 rather, 12. I hope I'm not, if I'm going too fast, slow me down. Oh, here we go. 11M. So it still says solar systems. So apparently we're in the market of selling planetary bodies. So we can sell, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, Saturn, we can sell planets now. Well, that's not what they did in the change. The only change was to change this to solar power systems. And so they didn't do it. And I don't know why they didn't do it, but that was the only change that was supposed to happen in the release that occurred on June the 27th at 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm sitting there hitting the refresh button, just dying to see the new forms come out, but that's one they didn't fix. So I don't know why that is. But anyway, so you still have to use the standard forms. Okay, so let's go back. When I showed you looking at the header, I'm sorry, and I did that a little too fast. When I'm looking at the header and the footer, I see the date at the top, but I also see the date down here at the bottom of the page. And again, it says 1222. So if I'm not using this version, or if I receive an offer that is a version different than this, so it'll obviously be older, not newer, because we're coming out with forms again in December, right? We do this twice a year. We do it in anticipation of new laws that are about to take effect. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the revision date, and I want that to be fairly current. All right. Okay. So that being said, let's talk about what happens when CAR issues the new and the revised forms. All right. So the library will be updated. So let's go in here, and I want to show you the library. So over here, let me go back to the beginning. In fact, let me, yeah, I'll do it from here. It's okay. So right here where it says all forms, this is the library. So now CAR on June the 27th updated the library, which means all the forms in here that have a new date are all going to say 1223, right? So here's 623, the agent commission sharing agreement. See to the right of it, it says 623. So I know we updated it in 623. When I'm over here looking at the forms themselves, it'll tell me when the revision date was. So here's the LAD was revised on January of 23. So I see that revision date. Now back here to the forms, I can always go and click on, I'm under California Association of Realtors library. I click on all and I go down to form update for 623. And this shows me all the forms that have been updated. And obviously in December, it'll say 1223, right? So, so that's where you go. You can tell that they did. It's a huge undertaking. All right, so that's my library. So they're going to update your library for you, okay? They will, existing forms will be updated to the current version. So you can count on that, other than obviously the RPA. The RPA was scheduled and I was doing talks on it, and then they just chose not to do it, and I don't know why. They may have some other things coming. So existing forms will be updated to the current version. We're in the library, okay? New forms will be added to the library. So if there's a new form, they will add that form. And so as I showed you just a second ago, when I'm over here and I look at the library and I look down here at forms revisions, you can see here's the whole list of all the forms. We had what, 67 revisions, but only 4 new forms. So, a lot of these, like notice of entry, 5 versions of it, so really not as big a deal as I personally don't think it's that big a deal. But I have people call me all the time and they say, do we have a form to, transfer the listing to somebody else? That kind of, I get these calls all the time. And so, of course, I've been called now by the Department of Real Estate the forms expert, which I don't know where I got that title, but again, I'm honored, right? The forms expert. So if you ever have a question about any of this stuff, let me know, and I'm more than happy to help you with that. Okay, so that's my library. Let's take a look now. I want to show you what happens next. So your templates, and again, I showed you that page where my templates were. Okay, so let's take a look at that again. I'm going to take us back to the list. So here's my templates. I have property management templates. I counsel property management companies. I have the classes that I do, the RPA, and the reason I say this: open house safety, the lease template, the seller listing, all these these are all templates. Okay, all these are templates for transactions, so that I know that I and our company, our agents, are utilizing my expertise in doing that. Okay, and I think that's really, really important. All right, so the templates will be updated, okay? The existing forms will be updated, but they will not give you new forms. So those 4 new forms that they had will not be loaded into your template. Well, here's the good news. Everything else is going to be current, right? So if I create a new transaction today and I use my buyer offer template, then I will have all of the current forms in it, okay? Is that clear? Everybody understand what I'm saying? We'll talk about, here's what happens when I'm copying. So we'll talk about copying. So when they issue the forms, they will not touch a transaction that you have in progress, right? Or in process, right? Because they don't want to mess with what you've done. Part of the challenge is that you've had I remember when we updated a FERPTA one year, we updated it in January because at the last minute the legislative body changed the California FERPTA, so we updated it in January. It's a very rare occasion for that. Normally we may have little soft publishes, we call them. Those are little things that will update as time goes on, but they're not going to touch a transaction you have going on. All right, and that's safer for you because you've already had somebody sign something, and then why would you have them sign something else? Now we'll let you know when you really should be updating to a newer version of a form if it's in the middle of a transaction. But if you create your transaction in June the 1st, and then we updated the forms on June the 22nd or 27th, carry on, keep doing what you're doing. It's okay. We'll let you know whether or not. And I always do a class. I do it in the I do it twice a year prior to the new forms coming out. We're already working on December, okay? So, I'll do a class probably October, November, more likely November, in anticipation of the new forms coming out, new and revised forms that are going to be coming out. And so I'll go through all of the forms, just like we went through 67 forms, 67 revisions and 4 new forms right before the June publish, okay? So I'll let you know ahead of time if there's going to be a problem. So CAR will not touch a transaction in progress, which means you are using an older form. Now, here's the problem. If you are copying a form from 1976, then you are using forms from 1976 because they're not going to touch a transaction you have in progress. So I'm going to show you how to fix that problem too. Okay. All right. So in other words, if you're in the habit of copying transactions, the forms in them may not be current. And so, again, if you start your transaction in June and you're going to close it in the middle of July or end of August or whatever, carry on, use the forms that were in place at the time, but on all new transactions, make sure you use the new forms. And the easiest way to do that is to have the template set up. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you all this, the solution, right? Because I'm not about giving you problems. I'm about giving you solutions. And so let's talk about the solution. And by the way, thank you all for being here, but then there's also the group that will go in and watch. Hi, Hannah. The group that will go in and watch the videos later, so they don't get the benefit of asking questions. So please, if you have a question, please let me know. But what's the solution to all this? Well, the solution is if you have a transaction that you really love. So in one of those things, where I've got one, I just love the transaction I'm doing. Well, then save it as a template. Okay, and then log out, log back in. They'll have updated your forms, assuming that hopefully, it's like I had a call from a broker who says, "Oh my God, Kevin, I'm being sued." And I go, "I'm so sorry." She says, "I've been doing it this way for 30 years." And I said, "All right, you've been doing it wrong for 30 years. So make sure you're doing it right." And that's why we're here today. Let's make sure we're doing it right. And then that way we can keep doing this for years and not have to worry about it. I don't want you worrying about stuff. I want you to go out there and make money. Okay. Help the homeless, as I always say. So speaking of templates, we're going to talk about the seller listing template. We're going to talk about the buyer offer template. If you want a copy of ours, I am more than happy to send it to you. Just send me an email. All right. You've got my email address. Okay. I will send it to you. So, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to back up just a little bit because I'm going to also send you instructions on how to implement it into your program. Okay. So let's go back. I want to get into, let's go back to my dashboard. I want to take a look at my dashboard really quick, just as kind of like a reset. Dashboard is like hitting refresh. Okay. Are there any questions so far? Because I'm going to show you where, the rubber meets the road, as we say. Okay. All right. On the right-hand side, you can see all the, tell me it's a quiet real estate market. Oh my God. Anyway, so here's a list of my transactions. Let's pull up a sample transaction. So I have one that I created back in May. So it's a transaction. So the forms are not current. Okay. Let's take a look at my forms. I'm going to click on documents. And in documents here, I've got, looks like I've got the template as we were using it back in May. Okay, so all right, so I want to make sure that my forms are current. And now I'm going to write an offer based on this sample transaction that I had in progress. I just so loved the transaction that I wanted to make sure that the forms were current. And since we won't touch a transaction in progress, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to click on apply template. Everybody see what I'm clicking on? Apply template. It pulls up my forms, my template library. Okay, my template library. All right. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for my buyer offer. Where did it go here? Buyer, probably just passed it. There it is. Buyer offer. I actually put in June of 2023, and then in December, I'll change it to December of 2023. Remember, again, they've updated my template. So now I know my template is current, right? So now I'm just going to go, like I said, I could leave this alone, but I do update it with the new forms because I want to put new forms in there too, like the residential unit addendum, purchase agreement addendum was a new form. The two of the other big notable ones were the we bifurcated the contingency removal form. It used to be one form. At the top was the buyer, at the bottom was this little part about the seller. Confused the heck out of everybody. So since we're not worried about the Paperwork Reduction Act anymore, we went ahead and split it into two. So now we have the CRB, which is the contingency removal for the buyer. We have the CRS, which is the contingency removal for the seller. Now, again, you don't have to become an expert on all this. You just got to look at the webinar, okay? So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on Buyer Offer Template, and I'm going to say Apply It. And it's going to say, are you sure? And I'm going to go, of course, I'm sure. I wouldn't be here. So now it's going to apply to the transaction that I had in progress, so that now I know that all of my forms are going to be current. So let's take a look, offer. Let's take a look at the offer. Of course, it's not there. Where's my RPA? All right, better yet, watch this. I'll show you a neat trick. If I want to find something, I don't know where it is, I just type in RPA. And there it is, and it says 12 of 22. So I have the current version of the RPA in there, okay? So anybody have any questions about any of that? I wanted to show you, this was how I applied the template to the transaction. Now, the other thing I can do, rather than opening it up and applying it, is over here on the right-hand side where you got that little drop-down arrow. I can click the drop-down arrow and I can say, where did it go here? Save as template. Remember, again, a transaction I just absolutely loved. And so now I may save it as a template. I may say, you know what, I like this one so much, I want to save it as a template. Then, of course, give it a different name. So save as template. And it says, you know, what do you want to call it? It's a purchase template. You know, I'm not going to have it automatically add because I'm going to delete it anyway. Okay, everybody good? Okay, so let's go back now. Let's go back to, so by the way, that works on the buyer, that works also on the seller, that works also on listing or leases, things like that. So let's go back now. I want to take a look at my templates, and let's go ahead, and I want to dig in just a little bit. So I think I'm going too fast because I'm almost done. We're half an hour into this. So let's take a look at what I've done. So I'm going to open up the buyer offer template. Okay. So here is the buyer offer template. I get a warning that shows up right away that says, you know, you're currently modifying a purchase template. If you're not trying to do that and you want to start a new transaction, then click here and it'll take me to the transactional side of things. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do in creating your template is you want to decide what forms you want in there. So I've gone to documents. And so again, this is a template. So I need it to be generic. I need it to be across the field. I'm going to pull the first thing I'm going to pull in there, of course, is my cover sheet. Okay, so I pull in the cover sheet. I'm going to use the Forms Editor Classic, and I'm doing this. And the reason I do this is because I know who I am, and I know that I'm the one that's going to be transacting business. And again, this is the buyer offer template, right? See right up here on the top corner, it says buyer offer template. So I don't know who the seller is. I don't know who the buyer is. I go down to page 2. I know it's in California because I know I'm using this form for California transactions. I've asked them for years, why don't you just put California in there as the default? And nobody ever answers me on that, which is okay. They're busy, right? That kind of thing. And then I scroll down. What else can I put in here? First of all, most of this stuff in here doesn't go anywhere. So I wouldn't go crazy in here. I'm just going to show you a couple of things that I want you to do that'll make it easy for you so that, you know, you won't have to, you know, do the Department of Redundancy department. Okay. But, you know, we've got a broker, I love him dearly, in our office who fills all of this in. And it's like, it's not going to go anywhere. But it's, I guess if you're not busy, then, you know, have a ball, right? But it's not intended to be a PIM. It's not intended to become a personal information manager. But most of this, when you fill out the offer, it's going to put the purchase price in here. When you put the closing date, it's going to put that date in here. Okay. And we're going to see in a second how important that is when we start looking at checklists. Okay. So, you know, what else do I know? It's a residential purchase. So I could probably check residential. Scroll down, I put in the escrow company that we like to use. But I also, by the way, again, this is not an endorsement, but I put in their escrow officer license number. You know, again, this does populate on the offer. Okay. Their phone number, their email address. Okay. So this is the template. And then since I know I'm the buyer, I'm representing the buyer, I can go ahead and fill my information in, which means I don't have to do this every time I write an offer. I only have to do it once. And so when I apply my template to that sample transaction, all of this was in there. Okay, so I didn't have to do it again and again and again. So I've got the company name. If you don't know what company you work for, check with your office manager or your broker. The street address, the city, the state, the zip. I always do the zip +4 just because that's a little bit of my OCD kind of thing. Real easy to find it. You go to USPS.com or take a look at um, um, the tax database and it'll give it to you. But I put the zip +4, which means people know that I'm researching. I'm pretty intense into doing this the right way. Got my telephone number in there. I've got my email address in there. I use uppercase K, uppercase B, uppercase R. This is so that people can read it without wondering, like, what do all those letters mean? So now they can read it. My company, I'm sorry, it's actually Linda's brokerage. I gave it to her years ago. Just can't seem to get rid of it. But anyways, I'm still here. But anyway, here's the corporate broker license number. There is my broker license number. And so I have to have both of those. Remember what we said earlier, the DRE compliant template. Okay, so I want to make sure that all of that information is in there. And we've really covered the majority of everything. The seller's broker, I don't know who that is yet, but obviously when I go to write my offer, I'm going to click on MLS Connect. I'll type in the MLS number. I'll hit go, and then it'll pull in the supposedly all of the seller's broker's information. You need to double check it anyway. Sometimes instead of pulling in the brokerage's DRE number to pull in their MLS number, I thought we had fixed that at one point, but somebody sent me a thing saying, hey, well, yeah, it's still showing the broker number. So it's not the DRE number. And they were right. So, okay. So double check it when you do a transaction. But since I don't know who the seller's broker is here, I don't have anything put in there. Okay. All right. So I do like the fact that they did change the cover sheet. Instead of saying the selling broker, they changed to buyer's broker and then the seller's broker, so that we can, again, we're doing this in plain English, okay, in order to make it enforceable with the parties. Lender information doesn't go anywhere. Appraisal doesn't go, it doesn't do anything, right? So you could fill those in until the cows come home, but it doesn't populate on any of the forms, okay? And I'm saying this from my expert opinion, okay? Title company, whoever, I'm going to put in the name of the title company. I'm going to put in our contact that we like to use there. It says title officer, but I don't put the title officer's name in there. Actually, that's interesting because I usually put her name in there. All right, so I'm going to put her name in there, but she's not the title officer. She's the title rep, okay? Two completely different things, right? You all know that title officer is a very different position, okay? All right, pest control doesn't go anywhere. Disclosure, we don't need to put anything else in there. The home warranty that we like to use, that normally our buyers like to use, and there you go, okay? So I don't even need to save it. I can hit my back button. It saved it automatically for me already anyway. Everybody okay? So in my template, this is one of those things that I'm going to want to do. And the phone never rings except when I'm doing a webinar. Okay. So back up here, what else do we do? So this is buyer offer. So we're going to have the buyer representation agreement in there, right? So here's our BRBC. So we always do the realtor's acknowledgement first. Okay. It's the first form you ever sign in a real estate transaction. The first form the buyer ever signs is going to be the agency disclosure. Okay. But I use that realtor acknowledgement form. If you're not familiar with it, let me just pull it up really fast. But I use the realtor acknowledgement. It's probably my best closer. Okay. Here's page one, the whole thing of page one. And it says, and I'm telling the client, whether it's the buyer or the seller, I'm telling the client, that it's actually against the law for you to call yourself a realtor if you aren't. And so drilling into that law, it actually says you to profess to be a member of a trade organization. And a realtor is a term for a trade organization. It survived all the lawsuits at the national level. Everybody said, well, I thought you were all alike, right? It's kind of like tissue and Kleenex. And the fact of the matter is that we're not all alike. At least me, I subscribe to a written code of ethics, and I always say it that way. I never say, I'm ethical, they're not. I don't say that. I mean, you don't make yourself better. My dad always said, you don't make yourself better by cutting somebody else down. And certainly I don't want to make a disparaging remark about anybody else. So, but not all people that have real estate licenses are realtors. So in fact, frankly, we have 435,000 licensees in the state of California, but less than 200,000 of them are realtors. So less than half So now I've got the buyer and the seller scratching their head going, wow, all this time I thought, everybody was a realtor. And the fact of the matter is, no, not everybody is a realtor. Some people think, well, you pay to play, that kind of thing. But it is business B&P code. I always say B&P code, business and professions code, 1017. Just have it. Now I'm going to aspirate. So it's a law. Okay. So and then I always go into the explanation of the difference between, somebody just has a license and somebody that's a realtor. And again, this is the very first form in every transaction that I do, no matter what, buyer side, seller side, lease, everything. This is the form I'm going to do up front. It's got my name on it. I'm going to sign it in front of the client. I'm going to hand it to them, and we're off to the races. Okay. So back to my template. So that's my realtor acknowledgement form. And again, that is my best closer. That is a closing form. I close it with that. Okay. So I've just never had anybody refuse me. So then I've got my buyer representation agreement. So let's take a look at that. You can see I added the BMI to it, which you really should have. We're looking, by the way, at the state level of changing the BMI to actually be a list of things, because right now all it does is say, you'll tell us in writing what it is that what's important to you in a purchase, right? That way we know to avoid it, or we know to provide additional disclosures. Like, I want to be in this school district. Well, we don't quote school districts. So now that you've told me school districts, now I'm going to make sure that you are signing off on the website where the government website of where the school districts are. Okay, so there's my agency disclosure again, as I said earlier, the very first form your client will ever sign. All right. And then of course I've got so this was CAR attempt to create a template. And like I said earlier, we realized we got down the path and we really just couldn't put anything else in there, only because we don't know what direction your transaction is going to take. But we do know we want the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisor. We know we want that. We want to discuss the difference between discriminatory intent versus discriminatory effect. Here's my language intent, there is effect. So we for sure want that in there. Again, they've started a template for you. This is my PRBS, and my PRBS form is the form that both the buyer and the seller sign, authorizing us up front to do dual agency. Okay, so if you don't have this form signed by everybody, you're going to have a problem. All right. And so on the East Coast, when I'm teaching on the East Coast, you actually have to get the consent has to happen as soon as you know that you're about to be dual agent. So as the seller's agent, I know I'm single agency, of the agent for the seller, but then along comes someone from our office under the same broker, under Linda, writing an offer on our list, on Linda's listing, essentially, because it's Linda's listing, it's not mine. And so now I know I'm going to be dual agency. And so in Virginia, for example, now you have the buyer sign an additional form because the buyer can refuse to consent, right? The buyer can say, I'm just not comfortable with that. And in the legal field, when I'm talking to lawyers, the same thing. They're all going, how do y'all get away with dual agency and not have a conflict? And I go, yeah, I know, but because I've got that hat too, right? But in Virginia, you got to have them sign it again, but they can refuse to sign it. They can say, no, I'd rather go have somebody else represent me, somebody from another company represent me. So they have this legal fiction in Virginia called designated agency. I don't see that happening in California in the near future, but it's always a possibility. So this is the form that authorizes you to be the dual agent. Okay. All right. And then, of course, my wire fraud. You don't think this is a hot topic. It's getting worse. Every NAR meeting, again, I'm on Risk Management Issues Committee. Every meeting, we have the FBI come in and talk about the increase in wire fraud and how many millions of dollars are going away that they can't get back. So and then I have my buyer representation agreement. Okay, so as you can see, I have filled some of the things in there because I know, again, remember when I filled out the cover sheet, it automatically filled in the brokerage company, right? I did check NA for no pre-existing buyer representation compensation agreement because I want to make sure that the buyer, do you have a written agreement with anybody else? A written agreement, right? And remember, the DRE says you need to be asking them when they come into the open house. You need to be asking them, do you have a buyer representation agreement with another brokerage? NAR requires it, DRE requires it, and if you've seen my, how to hold the open houses, the webinars that I've been doing, you'll see that you need to ask that question up front. And I love asking the question because then it begets the answer, for lack of a better word. It begets the question, what's that? And then they say, well, oh, no, I don't think so. What is that? And then I show them one and I say, this is what it looks like. So I have, Ken Kaplan calls it the buyer loyalty agreement. So we have this agreement that says that we agree to love each other. We're going to work together in the real estate transaction. And you know, in exchange for me representing you, you agree to allow me to represent you. In exchange for doing that, you agree to make sure that I get compensated. And I never use the word commissions. I always use the word compensation. Okay, commissions throws everybody off, right? But you know, we have a transaction right now where the seller is refusing to pay us the more than the amount that the agent put into the MLS. So our agreement with the buyer is a higher figure, and so the buyer is going to make up the difference. And the buyer always comes back to us and says, "You're worth it." And so, you know, sometimes it's going to be a significant amount of money. I had a transaction last year, was $15,000. That was the difference in the commissions. Okay. All right. So anyway, so I'll send all this to you, but obviously I put in, you know, the way we do things. You can always go out. This is the class. This will be next Tuesday. We'll talk about this, but this is our representation agreement filled out. There's not that much to fill out, folks. So I'm going to tell you, let's do it right the first time. I always put in the SDAR, local area disclosures. I always check the box, statewide buyer and seller advisory. And again, we have our RCSD on the form itself, so we don't need a separate form. Everybody good with that? I love the buyer transactional advisory. We'll talk about that on Tuesday. And I love the buyer's investigation advisory. Remember, it used to be the buyer's inspection advisory, but that's our job. Our job as real estate agents is to conduct a reasonably competent, diligent visual inspection of the accessible areas of the property. And so thankfully, they finally changed the name to investigation, because the buyer's job is to investigate. The agent's job is to inspect. The seller's job is to disclose what they knew or should have known. This is the standard of care for everybody. Okay. All right. So not to go any deeper on this, here's my CCPA form. Okay. All right. So everybody good so far? So this is the nitty gritty of this part. You need to get good at that buyer representation agreement. I'm telling you, it's coming. It's going to be, you're going to have to do it. And I know some people are going to, I'll wait until it's required. And it's like, okay. But I've never had a buyer refuse me. So I don't understand what the problem is, but I have had people call me up and say, my buyer walked into an open house and they bought, the agent stole my client. And I said, did you have a buyer representation agreement? And of course they always say, I knew you were going to say that. And I go, well, then you didn't have a client, you had a customer. And those are two completely different things at law. So so get good at it. Again, come to Tuesday afternoon's class. We'll have a lot of fun. Okay. All right. So that's my BRBC. And again, we're on my buyer side of things. And so I'm going to go back. Again, here's all my, I have a place to put the pre-approval letter, right? But obviously there aren't any yet because we don't have, and you always want to have the pre-approval written by the lender. You always want it to contain language that says that the lender has verified the source of down payment and closing costs sufficient to purchase the property, right? Because you don't want that information in your file. I assure you, your broker doesn't want it in there. Personally identifiable information, no. So that when you give your computer to the high school, you don't think those kids know how to get into your computer. They're pretty good. So anyway, pre-approval letters would go in there. And of course, we always have them written for the amount of the offer, not, you know, $12 million. And then now everybody thinks they're leaving money on the table. Property info, this is where we put where we put a copy of the MLS. We always go to, when we go into the MLS, we to write our offer, we always print the listing at or about the time that we're writing the offer, because that'll protect us in making sure we're not, you know, seeing things, you know, when things get changed later in the transaction, like the commissions and like, you know, things about property, stuff like that. So we want to protect ourselves. So the MLS copy that will go in here. The CRS tax data will go in here. The RPR will go in here. Anything has anything to do with the property. Okay. And then of course we have the offer. And so here's everything for us. This is everything that goes out with an offer. So we have the APA, the LAD, we have the SBSA, the MCA, all of this goes out with our offer. So when we write an offer on a property, we are going to get it's going to be a lot of activities. Now, this is the buyer offer, so I'm going to get rid of the seller acting against the vice of broker, the seller part of things. Be very careful. I'm doing this because I want you to see, be very careful about deleting things. If you delete something and oops, it was a mistake, we can't get it back. So once you delete it, there is no recycle bin. Okay, so just so you know. So I deleted it out of the buyer offer template. I deleted the seller acting against the broker's advice. Okay, so we have all these things in there that we do. Notice of default purchase agreement, things like that. So we've created the template to write the offer. This is just the writing of the offer part. Then we have the disclosures to send, and normally, so we have a whole list of disclosures that we give the buyer. But again, we're going to get disclosures hopefully from the seller's agent. I'm always, I don't know, positive mental attitude, right? I'm always praying. I've got one right now where I get no disclosures. We've got the offer going back and forth. I think they're trying to scurrying around really fast, trying to put the disclosures together, because I talked to the agent last night and I said, if you send over the disclosures at the time of the offer, the buyer doesn't have a right to rescind the contract, right? Based on those disclosures. And so they're like, well, I knew that. Okay, good. All right, roll with it. But I think that's what they're doing right now, is scurrying around trying to get the disclosures. So here are the ones that we give the buyer prior to the transaction moving together. And then Linda has a great little idea here, signed by all. And so once a document is completely signed by all of the parties, then she puts it in there. That way we don't have to go looking for it. Okay. So again, I get a kick because I get emails from people saying, here's the FE, and I go, what's FE? And they say, well, it's the fully executed contract, stupid. What do you think? And I'm like, fully executed? Well, that's great. So at law, that means we're closed, right? I thought it was an executory contract while we were working on the transaction. I'm pretty sure, right? Again, I teach attorneys this, but in fact, they're telling me it's fully executed, which tells me I should just, send my check. I'm ready, bring it on, right? But they do the FE thing, and I just kind of like, oh, really? So, but that's not what that is. Okay, so fully executed means we've closed. All right. It is an executory contract until that time. So I know we hear these really cute words and stuff like that, but you want to be really careful about what you say, just because it's cute. Make sure do a little research. Then we have a conversation log, and obviously we don't have anything in the conversation log because this is a template. But we're going to upload all the emails and everything into this transaction after the transaction is done. Now, I prefer everything by email, but I'm going to show you a shortcut that's even better. So, and then we have the home warranty, the one that we like to use. We ask the buyer who they want to use. We give them choices, and then they let us know, and then we put that one in there instead. Okay, everybody good? So at this point right now, I've got the documents that we can go back up to folders here, and we see all the documents. Some of them didn't fit in folders, so we'll do that later. I can't really do anything with parties other than me and the escrow and the title. Those are the only ones that can really put anything in. I've got the natural hazard company we like to use, the home warranty company that we like to use, but I really can't, and I don't have the names of the people that are representing them. So, but then they would be in bold. Okay. So I don't have any of this other information. So really nothing to do at this point. Notice how we have the buyer attorney, the seller's attorney. So, you're fortunate in California where you and I are paid to represent the buyer or the seller in a transaction. But in other states, it's the attorney that does that. And when the attorney makes a mistake, the agent writes, I've been trying to kill that mosquito for a while. Did I get him? The agent writes the the agent writes the offer and does the transaction, but in other states the attorney does it, and so you have to sue them on malpractice insurance. My experience is that is varied, let's just say that. So that was my parties, and then I have my documents, then I have my checklist. And so we have our own checklist, so we really don't utilize this, but you can see when you're looking at it, I can see I can see a calendar, and the calendar tells me. So when I write the offer for the buyer, it will put the data in here, the offer, the acceptance, all that. We'll put the data in here. It's a pretty good attempt at a checklist. I would recommend close of escrow. It'll go off of what your contract says, even though you might have negotiated a different closing date later, and that's something I would go in there and just change it afterward. But once I write the offer, it'll have the date in this checklist. Everybody good? And then of course I have my e-sign templates. And this is where we send things out. I don't know why they call it e-sign templates, because it really isn't a template. But when you're gonna send something out for signature, you click on the new button, and then you put in the forms that you're going to use in the template, and then you send it off based on your signature platform. Okay, everybody good? And that, frankly, is really the buyer offer template. Okay, so any questions about any of that? And I want to take you. I'm gonna take us on a little detour right now, because I want to talk to you about what you have in your contact information in the program itself. Then we'll come back and do the seller listing template. Everybody okay? Questions? Anybody? It's my opportunity to get a drink of water. Okay, I think templates are like it is a must do in our business, because I'm just not going to create a new transactions every time I starting from scratch. I'm not going to do that. I don't have time for that, right? Your client is in the car with you, or worse yet, you've got them in the car behind you, and you're racing to the office. You don't have the time to learn how to use ZipForms. This is a good time to learn how to use that. Okay, so all right. So here's what I'm going to do. So since we are closing in on 11 o'clock, we're right on time here. I'm going to go over here on the right hand side. You see where that little silhouette is? I always think of it as a target, but it's when I hover over it, it's got my name, it's got my company, it's got my address of my office, and it says individual agent account. Now, if you are running a broker version of ZipForms, it'll say this is either a broker agent or a broker admin account. I know that personally, because I'm working, thankfully, thanks to Ed Charbonneau, who is the head of our ZipForms department at CAR right now, helping me with a broker where they ended up buying more than one broker version. They really didn't need it. You only need, if you're going to get the broker version, that's the one where the broker, all the agents do all their transactions under the broker. So again, I help create brokerage firms where I'll create a template for the company, and so then that would say the broker admin account. And then when the agent goes to write their offer, they just click on buyer offer, boom, off it goes. So rather than sitting down and doing this for 500 agents, I just do it once, and then they can just go ahead and utilize it from there. So let's go ahead and click on that really quick. And you'll notice I got a couple of options. One of them is profile and settings. The other is English. We've stopped drafting the forms. I remember speaking to Gov Hutchinson about it last year, and I said, what happened to those, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese? What happened to all those other? We had 5 versions of the forms, and he says nobody was ever using them. And so he said we just didn't think it was necessary to keep doing it, because it was costing us a lot of money and nobody was ever using it. So again, English is the universal language for air traffic controllers, that kind of thing. So, but if you get into a lease, for example, the law says that if you get into a lease and it's not in the language that they're speaking, then you really need to have them speak with an interpreter, and you don't want to be that interpreter. Okay, so I know a lot of court certified interpreters. They're easy enough to find. I prefer the court certified interpreters, but again, on leases, it's the law. So you want to make sure you're doing it that way. So I'm going to click on profile and settings. And then that's going to open up this part. Okay, so I know I don't have any compromising information in here, but I definitely, you all need to be doing this. And if you're following along, does everybody know where I am right now? Everybody following what I'm doing? Looks like Linda got signed off again. She's having some internet issues. So I can put my picture in there. Right now it's an avatar. I don't know. I don't need to see myself, but okay. First name, last name, email address. By the way, this goes nowhere. It doesn't impact anything. All of my emails go to my Burke Real Estate, so I don't even know why we have that, but okay. Telephone number, and then by the way, yes, my DRE number. I'm going to have my DRE number on there. Again, this is my individual account. So see down here on the bottom, this is the part I always see missed. Email signature. I'm going to click on email signature, and then I would tell you, if you've got an email signature that you're pretty sure is compliant, I would copy and paste it and just put it in here. I don't know if I'd type it out. The minute you put your cursor in there, it should allow you to start changing things. Mine is not doing that. I'm going to click the B button. Now it allows me, see, now I can move that cursor around. So sometimes I click one of these buttons and that helps it to work. So if you ever get stuck with that, so I put, this is my signature line. So on all the emails I send out of this program, and I'm going to recommend that you send your emails out of this program. So that way you're not having to PDF everything later. So, I'm going to have this signature line. So broker, associate, realtor, DRE number, the corporate DRE number, the name of the company I'm with, Burke Real Estate Consultants, and then my telephone number. Obviously, I don't give out my cell phone number, but if you call that number, you hit the 4 right away when the voice comes on, it rings wherever I am. It rings on my cell phone, it rings wherever. So there's my address on the DRE record. And then of course I have a little disclaimer in there that I'm not gonna, nothing I'm doing in here is going to constitute legal, medical, or tax advice. I remember making a comment in one of my webinars that I would tell people to take a baby aspirin, what is it, 84 milligrams or something, prior to taking the state exam. And then somebody said to me, well, that's medical advice. And I went, oh, Lord help us. Okay. So anyway, I had to change everything. So I added that to all my signature lines now. So I don't give you legal advice. I don't give you medical advice, and I'm clearly not going to give you tax advice. So, and they're only in that order because they're thank you, Murray. I know, right? So it's medical advice. What? Okay, I get it, right? People try to trip us up all the time. So anyway, and legal, medical, and tax, those are in alphabetical order so that everybody knows that I'm not, not partial to one over another. But it clearly, in my case, I may have some advantages, and that is that if you're dealing with me, I want to make sure that you understand it doesn't create an attorney-client relationship. I have no interest in practicing the law. I'm proud of that. Okay. All right. So everybody good with that. So I'm going to go back up here. So make sure that that's in there, folks. It's really important because the DRE has said that they consider your emails out of this program as well as out of the MLS to be first contact. And first contact, as you know, has to contain all this information. Now, yours won't look like mine, and probably better that it doesn't, but have your name as it appears on your DRE license, have your company affiliation in there, have your, and again, that way you've satisfied NAR Code of Ethics and DRE. Have your broker number in there, your broker's broker number and your broker number. And again, if it's a corporation, broker number. So we have California Corporate Department of Real Estate broker number. I probably should change that. Let's change that. It's now it's not gonna let me do it. So there we go. Corporate. Nope, don't want me to do it. Look at that. For some reason, it's not allowing me to change anything. Let's see. Can I do it by? Oh, I can do it that way. Okay. Here's what I'm getting at is that there is no California Corporate Department of Real Estate. So it's California Department of Real Estate Corporate broker number is there. It is there. Okay. So it should say corporate broker number. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to scroll back up at the top. I'm going to hit my save button because I did make a change. So I want to make sure I hit my save button. Okay. So again, it saved all this stuff and great. Now it's going to underline it. So I'm not going to worry about it. All right, good. So I hit save. Don't hit close, because if you hit close, it takes you back to the transaction. Okay. So sign in and security. So again, I don't know what that username is. It has nothing to do with, it's my handle at what are those things? Social media, Instagram, LinkedIn. So if you want to find me, just look that up. And then I'm probably not going to reset my password. I don't do 2-factor authentication. I think I don't think anybody, I don't think the bad guys are running around looking for ways to hack into my ZipForms program. Okay, that and Murray, where'd you go? I don't put my mobile number on anything. I'm not interested in that. Email, apparently it's in there because it says it's required. There you go. Offices. Now, people ask me all the time. They say, well, how do I get, I changed from, XYZ Realty to PRS Realty. How do I change that at the bottom of my forms? And so the answer is here. So under offices, you go here, and this will update company information on your forms. It will not do it to your template. So don't worry about what the template says, but you do want to make sure you have current information referencing your broker at the footer of your forms. I do a lot of trial work, and I'm always looking there to see if the person that wrote the offer is the person at the bottom of the form, or if they're pirating the software from somebody else. Okay, so existing transactions will continue to reflect the old company information unless you want to start them from scratch, but I don't know why you would want to do that. So I've got the company name, I've got the street address, I've got the city, the state, the zip +4, I've got the office number. We're good. Everybody okay with that? So if you need to change your information at the footer of a form, this is where you're going to do that. Okay. Forms. So here are the forms. Now, I like to move the forms around. So for example, I've got the CAR forms always at the top. And the reason why is, remember when I opened up a library before, and the very first thing you saw was the California Association of Realtors forms? Well, when the second thing you saw was the San Diego Risk Management form. So I put them in the order in which I use them. And so obviously I'm licensed in several states. So you got, and apparently I'm licensed in the state of San Francisco as well, down here at the bottom. But people are having trouble with the internet today. Oh no. I move the ones that I use more frequently up towards the top. Okay. So I've got, and the way to do that is you click on organize. And once you click on organize, oh dear, am I having internet trouble? Maybe it's me. No. Okay, my organize button is not working. Definitely not good. Nope, you can still see me. I'm still moving. Okay. Save. All right, let's see if that does anything. Forms option update. So I'm gonna click my organize button. Okay, it's not working. Of course, listen, I always say this, folks, that if you get in there and something's not working, don't assume it's you. It's frequently the program. And that's true of almost any program that we use. I'm just amazed that we've gotten away with it for so long. So, okay, so my organize button should have allowed me to drag and drop over here. All right. And so it's not working right now, but that's, nothing. I'm not going to hit a refresh. If I hit refresh, I got to start over again. So products, I'm going to click on products, and this talks about all the stuff that I have available to me in the platform. I go to settings, and this is where you would make another change. We're using DocuSign, although I got to tell you, AuthentiSign's pretty good. And right now it's free. I think at some point they're going to start charging for it. But for right now, Digital Ink is the old Digital Ink. It's not the original, but it's the 2.0. But AuthentiSign's pretty good. If you want the free version currently, DocuSign is the one that we happen to use. Email options, I usually don't do anything with that. If you want to receive a confirmation email when signed documents are available, I get them anyway. I don't know why, but I do get them anyway, so I'm not going to get them twice. So, okay, account preferences, again, I can have it open up at my transaction list, or I can have it open up at the dashboard. I like it at the transaction list because I don't usually spend a lot of time looking at the dashboard. I got to know what I'm doing. And then that's the default landing page. So when you turn the program on, that's where it goes. But then the default view of your transaction list is my transactions versus those transactions that are shared with me. And then I do saves. I come from the old Microsoft theory that you have to save frequently. So, every 5 minutes, that's the lowest one I have. I clearly don't want it turned off because I just don't trust the program enough to be able to do that. I hide the global navigation bar. So if you've always wondered, along there at the bottom that have that great big long disclaimer stuff, I hide that, not interested. I don't want it checking PDF documents for data. I had an agent, I was helping them, and we just went click, cancel, 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 because every single form would pop up and say, do you want to use the data from this? And we're like, go away. And so I helped them fix that so that it wouldn't happen anymore. So don't check that box. That's just because it'll add every single form it'll ask you. Okay. Template. Yes, I want importing template data to the transaction when the data is applied, when the template is applied. I want the broker and agent information to be in there, right? And then my mortgage, not like it matters, my mortgage calculator default interest rate doesn't populate anywhere. It doesn't even populate on page 1 of the purchase agreement. I have to manually go in and change that. Links to other transactions, I don't know. What could I do? Maybe sign into somebody else's ZipForms. That would be a violation, but okay. And then current single sign on. So I've got PenFed, which was a company I used to work with. Let's remove that one. I certainly don't need that anymore. It was a company I was supporting. Home warranty, I've got off on all these things because I just find they clutter up my system. Okay, everybody good with that? Going back up the top again, I'm gonna hit my save button. And then if that thing will go away, that'd be great. Okay, notification settings. Again, most of this is off. Oh, there's my doc inbox is a place where people can load documents for you up that don't necessarily go into a transaction. But I'm going to show you how you can send them an email address that if they just email everything to this email address, then it'll automatically load in your transaction. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Transaction notifications, all these are on. Zip code, if you're into that, list flash. I tell it not to email me because I don't want to know, because I don't compete with my agents. So I really don't need to know, our listing, information near the listing. Offer place, if you want to use it, you're going to get charged for it. Retention policy. So retention notifications show up at the top of every time I log into this thing. So I'm not going to change that either. Okay. All right. That being said, what's left? Assistant transaction. And so again, this is my transaction coordinator. I'm going to tell you, I don't care what you do, it's expensive. So if I click on, if I do assistant transaction coordinator and I click on invite new, I can purchase it. It says right here, become an elite and get elite agent, get transactions, ZipForms transaction coordinator for $0. But the minute I click on purchase, it says, no, it's not $0. It's actually $161.68 per year. And I believe that's a prorated number. So, I'm probably not going to go there. If I hit the second button, it's not going to let me do that. I don't have a promo code. So I'm just going to go ahead and exit the order. So it's not free. Why? It's too expensive. I just want to irritate them and tell them it's too expensive. So anyway, you do it or not do it. It's up to you. Okay. That being said, that's all I really need to do here. I'm going to hit my close button. And as I said earlier, when I hit close, it's supposed to take me back to the original part of my transaction, which it's not doing. So let me move it around a little bit. Now we hit close. I'm sometimes working in this program at 2 and 3 in the morning. And sometimes they are too. In this case, it's just not saving. So I'm going to click my profile and settings again. That takes me back to this. Hopefully I can close and get out. It's not letting me do that. I'm going to go here straight to templates. That'll get me out. Templates and checklists, bingo. So here we are. We're back to templates and checklists. Is everybody with me? Okay. So let's do this. So I created my buyer offer template, and because I worked in the buyer offer template and changed things, it moved it to the top of the queue. All right. So let's take a look at my seller listing template. And again, I'll send these templates to you if you want them. Okay. People say, why do you give these away for free? Well, I do give them away for free, like the first time, but then after that, I charge for it. So with some brokerage firms, they pay me to do it on a regular basis for their firm. So I'm okay with that, but I'll give it to you for free. I mean, if you're going to be, commercializing it, then I need to be charging for it. So I'm in my seller listing template. So how is that different than the buyer offer template? Well, over on the left-hand side, I have my folders again. Okay. And so I have my property info. So I'm going to have the listing input sheet in here. We've got a copy of the listing input sheet from our MLS. And so when I click on that, it'll pull up the listing input sheet. And there it is, straight out of SDMLS. I've already filled in stuff that we have a policy on in our office. Obviously, our company name is a policy. So we have all this stuff. We check the boxes on things. So we can fill out a lot of this without having to, but we use this whenever we take a listing. And so I know that one of the callers a second ago just went out and took a listing, and he takes the form with him and he fills it in, and then he scans it and sends it to me, and then I review it, make sure that it's okay. So this is also where we would put the photos for the property. Then we have the listing packet. So this is when he calls me on the phone and he says, I'm going to take a listing on this property, I say, how much, what's the term, all that kind of stuff. And then here it is. I've got it all right here. So I've got my seller's guide to residential listing agreement and the disclosures. I've got my residential listing agreement. Notice the date, 6/23. So let's go ahead and pull that up. There we go. And so on my listing agreement, and I just did this class, the how to create the ultimate listing agreement. And got it. I mean, listen, I was out of time at 2 hours and we were still going. So here's the listing agreement as I've created it. And again, if you're going to download the templates, you just replace your information with mine after you've downloaded the templates, obviously. So here's all the forms. Again, CAR's attempt at a template. I've got the here's the what we call the recitals. Paragraph 1 is the recitals. Obviously, the only thing that would be common to all transactions would be our company name. And then under listing price, I've got cash, conventional, FHA, VA. In a time back, we used to put in, seller will entertain offers between, X and Y, value range marketing. We don't really do that. I'm not seeing a lot of VRMs. If you're doing VRMs, that's boy, I'd like to hear about it, but most people are just given a fixed price anymore. So that came about in the early 90s, by the way. It was we got it out of New Zealand. The old company I was working for at the time was one of the largest companies in San Diego. And so we were doing value range marketing, try to stimulate the offers on the property. So I've taken out the commission. You put in there here, you want 10%, put in 10%, right? I mean, whatever commission. So CAR is not going to put a commission in there for you. And part of that, again, is that Sherman Antitrust Act. We are not allowed to create a form that has it. Now you can create your form that has it, or your broker can have one if they have a minimum standard in your company that has how much you're going to charge in commission. But CAR can't do it because we cannot set a commission to give the expectation that it's a customary commission. Okay, all right. Safety clause, protection clause. If the buyer approaches the seller, 90 days after the listing expires, the seller still agrees to compensate us. The seller still agrees to allow us to represent them. And again, remember, I keep using the word compensate, not commission. And then, whatever we do down here. So, oops, I saw something. So I need to get rid of that because we don't know what that number is going to be, not until we talk to the seller. This form has changed quite a bit, by the way. So make sure smart home features, make sure that you take a look at that ultimate listing presentation that I did. So SDMLS is where we are. And that's really the bulk of it under the particular form. People say to me all the time, there's really not much to do. And I always say that's correct. We do that on purpose. Why? Why do we create the standard form? And the reason we create the standard form is because we don't want you writing this language out, but that's what people do. So real estate agents all the time, I see these modifications in offers and modifications in listings and modifications to buyer representation agreements. And I go, where'd you come up with that? And they go, oh, I made it up, or somebody else did it to me. And so I thought it sounded really cool. And I'm like, oh no, that's probably not the way I would go with that. You need to be following your broker's advice, right? The broker can create that language, your attorney can create that language, but you drafting language, that's where, remember what we said earlier, we have the standard form to protect you, but I see agents writing things. And so that's why CAR gets into it and writes the standard language for you. Okay, and so that's why most of your form is there's a lot of copy paste. You can tell by looking at this part of the document that the font is different than it is up here. So they do a lot of copy paste. And so if I had my druthers, I'd probably tune this up quite a bit. But anyway, bottom line is, then we get down into paragraph number 19, which is where I write in, it is the seller's desire that all offers be presented through the seller's broker only. Now, that's not our policy in our office. I write that as an example of, you have a seller that says, I don't want anybody presenting their offer in person. I want you to handle it, right? So if you have a seller that says that, well, then this language would be helpful for you, but it's not our office policy. Listen, folks, if you come to me and you say, I'd like to present my offer in person, I'll buy you an ice cream. I mean, that's such an exciting event for me because, people just don't do it anymore. And I think it's sad because, really in our world, that was where our skill set was. I mean, I always ask people, I said, do you think that the seller's agent, you're gonna, we used to fax offers, we email the offer. Do you think for a second that they have your buyer's best interest at heart? And the answer is no. You are the best advocate for your buyer. So I really think you should be presenting your offer in person, and that is our office policy. Now, do our agents do it? We just tell you that's our policy, but if they do it or not do it is up to them. But I've gotten so many offers accepted. Remember, you must do it in the presence of the listing agent, the seller's agent, right? You don't just show up at the seller's door, knock on the door and say, hey, I got an offer for you. Don't worry about your agent. I'll get a hold of them later. I wouldn't be doing that. That's going to be a violation on a number of levels, including a DRE violation, because that's going to be interference with contract, and that's a tort. Okay, so we don't want to do that. So anyway, all that back, this is the language that I wrote. If you wanted to have, if the seller wanted you to take the offers in and not have them presented in person. But like I said, listen, you call me up and you say, I want to present my offer in person, I'll buy you an ice cream. I just think that's the coolest thing ever. Okay, haven't had anybody do that for me in decades, but I did threaten an agent last night with that. I told him, I said, I'd rather present my offer in person. They go, oh, they don't know what to do, right? Well, that's part of your job is salesmanship. So, and that all offers be cross-qualified with the lender of the seller's choice, not your choice, the seller's choice, and contain a pre-approval by the lender stating that the lender's verified source of funds sufficient to complete the down payment and the closing costs. So we want that language in there, okay? So we want something that even if I don't have the first part, I want the second part. We want pre-approval, and so I have the seller sign this, obviously, and so that becomes part of my listing agreement and part of our position that we take when an offer is going to come in, okay? So there's the rest of it. It's got my stuff in there. We're good. We got the seller's advisory, which is the I think you need to go over the seller's advisory with the seller. I had this twice yesterday. Somebody died on the property. Do we have to disclose the death? One was a property for sale. The other was property management. Well, we have a property that we're leasing. Do we have to disclose the death? And the answer is the Civil Code 1710. It does say that. Look at that. They added that to it. So they added 1710 to it. Again, I do talks on this all the time. Oh yeah, you have a duty. So the seller has the duty, right? But you tell the seller, and the seller says, well, I don't want to tell them it's a death on the property. We go, why not? They go, well, then they won't buy the property. They go, well, then you definitely need to tell them about the death, right? It's all going to be based on the timing. So Civil Code provides you have no disclosure duty where the death has occurred more than 3 years. And that's actually right out of the statute. Instead of saying you must disclose the death for 3 years, they say instead, you don't have a duty to disclose where the death has occurred more than 3 years prior to the date. So obviously within the 3 years you do. And as I said, I wrote this all out for the agents that called me yesterday. If you disclose the manner of death if asked. Does it say it in here? No, it doesn't say that in there. So the law says that you must disclose the manner of death if asked, but unless they died of AIDS or HIV related illness, in which case you don't have an obligation to answer the question. So easy enough. I think that's something that we can probably all comply with. Is everybody good with that? So death and other disclosures, yeah, and that's on rentals too. So if you're doing a rental, the RPOD form, the rental property owner disclosure form, has a paragraph in it because it's a statutory. Folks, Civil Code 1710, statutory requirement that you disclose the death within the 3 years on the property, by the way, not in bedroom number 2, but anywhere on the premises. They died in the driveway, that's on the property. Now, here's my problem with that, and I know I'm going crazy now, but here's my problem with the death on the property. Who pronounced death? I mean, unless they're chopped up into little pieces, who pronounces death? Well, the EMTs aren't qualified to do that. Death is usually pronounced by the doctor at the hospital. So technically speaking, nobody dies at the property. Now, don't run with that. I don't want you to do that, but I'm just telling you, this is the kind of conversation I have with the attorneys, right? But listen, death on the property, yeah, they died at the property. Okay, make sure you make that disclosure. Okay, everybody good with that? That's my seller's advisory. One of the reasons this is such a great form is because we don't want them coming back after us later on and suing us for for, not telling them about what the market was doing and all that. And you use your MCA form. So again, in my listing template, here it is. I've got my seller's guide. I've got my residential listing agreement. I've got my APA. That's SDAR's form, APA. I got the LAD. Again, the LAD is like the poster child for, I walk into a CAR risk management or NAR risk management, and there it is up on the board. They use it as an example of what local associations should be doing for their members. So I always have that in a transaction in San Diego. I have my market conditions advisory always. It says, I always tell people, listen, they ask me how the market is going, especially in a real estate transaction, what's the market going to do? And I go, I got a crystal ball, right? But the batteries are low. So, I really can't tell you right now, but let's take a look at the MCA form. It says, I can't predict the market. I can tell you what happened, but I can't really predict the future. None of us really can, right? And so who would have ever thought interest rates would be at what they are today and it's not impacted the market? I mean, every property that we have that is priced right is multiple offer, right? I mean, I had one in Coronado that was, asking was $1,250,000, closed at $1,750,000, $500,000 more. So listen, folks, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the market's going to do, but I know what it's doing right now. Okay, so I want to make sure that I tell them that. Okay, and that's that MCA form. And then seller, the KLA, the key safe lockbox, the FERPTA, the cyber crime form. We're going to do that in every transaction. The WCON is just a flyer, but we include that at the time of the listing. We also include it with offers. And then we have, in case you need it, the seller's purchase of replacement property. I think all of your transactions should have that form. And the reason is this, because this protects the seller to make sure that if their transaction on the house that they're buying doesn't close, then I want to protect them so that they don't have to close this transaction. Okay. Again, I'm the seller's agent in this case. So, I'm going to use the SPRP again, revised in June of 23. So this pretty much, lays out the rule on that. A lot of agents are afraid of this form, but I don't know why. I think that box should be checked on your listing agreement. You saw our listing agreement a second ago. I did not check it in our template, but I really think you should have it in all of your transactions, because if we don't want the seller to be homeless, so if they can't find a property, or they can't, hopefully most times they've already found it, but if they can't close on it, we don't want them necessarily to close on it because they have to, because they're going to move out of this one, right? So that's why I think that form should be used to protect your client. Now, obviously, you got to read it ahead of time. So right here, and close of replacement property. A pretty well written form. I'm just, every day I get more and more impressed. I mean, I wouldn't want to write these things myself. I mean, do you want to write these forms yourself? No, I think they're pretty good forms the way that they are. Okay, so taking me back over here now, I'm going to look at what else, anything else exciting. We do have an agent property showing checklist, safety checklist. I've got that in my open house webinar. If you want the form, send me an email. Tell the seller what you want to know about the home inspections. Seller's property showing safety checklist. Right, so probably should put those two together, right? So let's hit my organize button. So whenever you see organize, this is what you're able to do. So I'm going to go over here. Here's the agent's property showing checklist. Here's the seller's property showing checklist, and I'm going to move it up above it. I just want to show you how to do this feature. Once I've done that, I go back up here, I click on done organizing, and now it'll save it in the program. He says with confidence, and here it is. Okay. And then again, seller's instruction to exclude the listing. So we used to tell people to use the authorization to exclude out of the MLS if you weren't going to put it in the MLS. But again, remember, if you're gonna market it, you have to put it in the MLS. So, but now SDMLS has said we're going to save that form just for MLS only agents. Those are agents that aren't realtor members necessarily, that are just only buying into the multiple listing service. They want you to go ahead and use the SCLM, and here it is. So seller's instruction to exclude the listing from the MLS. Plus, we also have the form about seller's instruction to exclude the listing from the internet. Use that judiciously. Check with your broker, but you could have situations where your seller doesn't want their property on the internet. I get calls from buyers a year after closing saying, would you take my property? I've already bought it. I bought it a year ago. Get it off of the internet. And the answer is, once that listing goes in the MLS, it goes up to the internet. We don't have any control over it from there. So a lot of these third-party websites, I won't mention any names, Pillow and Gulia, right? They'll continue to market a property as if it's for sale when in fact it's sold a year ago. And so I always say to the buyer calls me up and says, how come you didn't tell me about this place? And I go, all right, which one is it? And I go and I look it up in the MLS. I go, well, because it sold last year, but they're still marketing it as it being active when in fact it is not active. Trust advisory, I think, is a really important form. I'm going to tell you that probably half of your transactions are going to involve trusts. So I'm going to move that up to the top. Okay, I'm going to move that up there near the top. Arbitration, I'm going to keep at the bottom. In our office, we don't like arbitration. We like people suing each other. So very different concept, but I want to move that. And now, of course, there we go again. So done organizing. So I'm going to organize it again, because what do I want to do? I want to put it in there right after the listing agreement, which of course is not letting me do. So let me move the listing agreement up there, and then I can obviously move the trust advisory by virtue of moving the other forms up above it. But trust advisory, very, very important. Probably more than half of our listings are held in trust. And so you want to make sure that you use that trust advisory. I'm going to tell you something that very commonly gets missed. Now nothing's working. All right, Linda. I was calling Linda. Linda didn't break this. This is something I did. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to open up the trust advisory. I'm going to show you something. This is the most commonly missed initial in this form is right here on the left-hand side with the listing, the broker's initials. Okay, so and I never see it initialed. I'm always having to send it back. Please, please finish it. So again, back to my listing packet. So this is my listing packet. I think we're done with that. Then I go into my disclosures packet. And again, this is on the seller side now. So the consumer's guide for disclosure requirements for sellers. And then I got my TDS. That's the big daddy of all of them. If I'm going to get hauled into court, it's going to be because somebody didn't finish the TDS. They didn't complete it. They didn't do they didn't read the disclaimer on the substituted disclosure. So we actually, I loaded the quick guide from CAR. We changed the TDS. And here's the whole quick guide on it. So again, if you ask me to send you this, I'll send you the whole template. But anyway, so we give that to the seller where they don't want to check a box. So I'm going to move my realtor acknowledgement again up to the top, because I think that's the first form you should ever have a client sign. Actually, that should be over in listing packet. So let's go ahead. I'm going to click on move, and where I'm going to click it on move it to the listing packet. Okay. So Linda, if you're watching this, it's okay. All right. Okay. I have to tell Linda it's okay, because whenever I change stuff, it's like, I don't know. So anyway, so look at all the stuff I have in here for disclosures. I got my TDS, my SPQ, my SPQA. Remember, the SPQA is the SDAR form. It is the standard of care and the standard of practice in San Diego County. I have more than enough trial work on this. Fire hardening if necessary. My parking disclosure, my AVID should be up a little bit. So let's move my AVID, because AVID is one of the most important things that you're going to do in the transaction. Whoops, is it going to let me do it? No, look at that. So it's always got to be a challenge. Look at that. It's not letting me do it. So I'm not going to, again, as I said, if the program's not working, don't assume it's you. Probably the program. Square footage and lot size advisory. I'm amazed. This is a form that I've always said, what took us so long? I say the same thing about the fair housing and discrimination advisories. Like, what took us so long, right? But the square footage, we know that the number one litigated issue against real estate agents is square footage. So why did we just create this form in 2020? I don't know, maybe we have 2020 hindsight, but that form, fill it out. It does all the disclosures for you. That doesn't mean be cavalier about it and then just start, putting square footage on flyers and stuff. But I would certainly put that in there. Oh, good. Now it's going to let me do my stuff. Let's see here. So let's move the square footage advisory up underneath the, since this is the listing, I'm going to move it up to there. Okay. Everybody good with that? Questions about any of that? And now you know my disclosures. So when an offer comes in, the offer goes in here under offers. I've already written the counter offer. I've already written the multiple counter offer. I've already addressed buyer interest letters, and I've already addressed contingencies and contingency removals. buyer brings you an offer that says, I'm writing you a contingent free offer. Thankfully, I'm not seeing as many of those anymore. But when the buyer brings you an offer with no contingencies to it, I mean, I get a kick because I get that call from the agent who says, I'm going to send you a clean offer. Well, clean offer, what I normally get in a clean offer is nothing's filled out, which means I've got to now write a counter offer that cleans up the clean offer. Okay. So, but removing contingencies at the time of the offer, definitely a no-no. I handle this on a national level, and it can get really ugly for you. So I've got my contingent free offer advisory and my non-contingent offer advisory. So one is the SDAR form. The contingent free offer advisory we created actually back in August of 19, I think it was. We updated it in October of 21. CAR followed in December of 22 and created the non-contingent offer advisory. I like the San Diego form better, but will I use both? No, because I don't want to create a conflict. And that's one of the reasons why when we create a form in our library, CAR won't put it in our library if it conflicts with something that they've also done. And that's probably wisely so, right? Because remember, we don't want to create a conflict with our forms. Okay, so this is what goes in the offer section. The principal ingredients here are going to be my offer, seller counter offer, and the seller multiple counter offer. Okay, and then again, here's Linda's signed by all. Here's the conversation log again. And so I mentioned this earlier. So when I'm going to open up a transaction using this in a second, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, because you have a way in a transaction you can create notes. And that's important. So my home warranty plan that we don't have anything in there under the seller side. We tend not to counter an offer. If the agent, if the buyer writes in what home warranty they want, then we're probably not going to counter it, because they obviously made an educated decision on why they wanted that one. And so I tell agents all the time, give them choices. But if you end up countering out a home warranty, I just had one where they countered out the home warranty. If you counter out a home warranty and then something's not covered, you're going to probably end up paying for it. So I wouldn't do that. I'm just hoping that the buyer's agent has gone through the warranty plans and discussed them without getting into insurance advice, discuss the benefits and those things of those plans. I happen to have open house forms. These are forms that we use. All of our open houses, actually all of our listings, will have the PVOH form in the listing, so that under documents, so that you can just go ahead and print it. We make it easy for you. You don't have to open up ZipForms, but we want you to have the property visit and open house advisory signed prior to showing the property. And then we have miscellaneous stuff, and this is all about why working with a realtor, and so some really good stuff in here. I put this in there, but like questions to ask when choosing a realtor, I put all that in there. It's available over here in the program, right? So if I go over here on the right-hand side in the library and I pull up the CAR sample letters, here they are. So a lot of this stuff, that's just some of them, but I've also got them under NAR's forms and templates. So look at this, 7 reasons to work with a realtor, agent property showing checklist. So they have all these great things, but nobody knows where they are. How to add curb appeal, how to attract more buyers. So I'm thinking right now about a listing we have. I'm going to start sending some of these things to the seller, because sometimes sellers know more than you do, right? Supposedly. So anyway, that's my miscellaneous. Okay, so questions about that and about creating the template. And again, I will send you the template if you want it. If you don't send me an email, I'm not going to send it to you. So that's my template. And then what else? I obviously have my checklist, my e-signs. Again, are really just creating a new e-sign, e-signature document. By the way, when you're doing a real estate transaction, you have access to a Zip Vault account, but it's not created until stuff is signed. So when you send things out for signature, we have it set up so it automatically comes back in the program. And then that way, the first document creates the Zip Vault account. Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions about any of that before I exit the seller listing template? Anybody? Seeing none? All those in favor? Back to list. And so now you see my seller listing template has jumped to the head of the pack, right? Because that's the one we were working on most recently. So now you see all my templates. Now, if you want to create your own template, and by the way, you'll never use clauses. Clauses is all these cool little things, but you really don't have any use for them. And why? Because you created a template. So you've got everything in your template. So if you want to create a new template, you click on new, and then you click on either new listing or new purchase offer or new lease listing, and you go ahead and create your new template. So you give it a name, you click on residential, click on something, whatever you're going to click on, and then do you want it to automatically apply to new transactions, yes or no? I can also fashion it off of the other templates that I've shown you. They're all in there. There they are. I can do all that. So this is how you would create a template from scratch. You may or may not have personal, global, and office in there. I was teaching the broker version and all those were available to me. Unfortunately, we didn't have much adoption, although I have a brokerage that I'm helping create right now that is going to be using the broker version. And so they'll create the templates for their agents to use, or I'll create them or whatever. Okay, questions about any of that? All right, I'm gonna hit cancel button. So that was my new, and then there's import. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm actually going to send you the instructions on how to do this, but you're going to click on import. I'm going to email you the templates when you send me an email that says I want the templates. I'll email you the templates. You're going to save it on your hard drive. You save it on your computer, desktop, whatever. Probably desktop is best. And then you're going to click on browse for file. And then it's going to say, okay, where is it? You're going to go up to your desktop and click on desktop. Okay, boom, bingo, there it is. Okay. All right, so and then you'll click on open, and once it clicks on open, you'll click on OK, and then it'll say, are you sure? And you're going to go yes, and then it'll say wait 5 minutes. And so and it does. It takes a little bit. It's a big file. Okay, so that's how you're going to import it. And again, I've written the instructions out so that you can go ahead and just follow the instructions, so you don't have to listen to me. Okay, is everybody good so far? Because I'm done with creating the template. And again, I created it was DRE compliant, because I have my DRE number up there, all that kind of happy stuff. So now I'm going to go over to my transactions. And again, let's pull up, I want to create a new transaction. Okay, so I've created the template already. And so now I want to do, and by the way, look at that, view RPR. I think that's great. We've required it in our office. It's good or better than an appraisal. So we do that. So I want to go ahead and I want to create a new transaction, now, not a template. I'm going to click on new, and then I'm going to say, what is it going to be? A purchase or an offer. Okay, so I'm going to click on the purchase or an offer, and then up here, I'm going to give it a name. So let's give it a name. I shouldn't do that. What we normally do is we use in an offer, we'll use, buyer's last name. Let's come up with something really clever. Smith. So Smith, Los Arboles, we always put in some amalgamation of the street address. We don't put the numbers in. And so we're going to call that offer. Now, why do I do this? And the reason I do this is because I'm going to create an offer. I don't know that it's going to come together, but I'm going to create it as if it is. Okay, but I'm also going to now have information in the offer that in case this one doesn't come together, I can copy it and write the next offer. Now, again, remember, so we're in, what are we at? August, we're in the middle of August. And so I'm pretty safe to know that I'm no more forms changes until December. So if I've created this offer off of the template, which is what we're about to do, then I know that if I copy the offer, I'm probably still safe. I have some things to delete and stuff like that, but that's what we're going to do. We can put in the street address. You don't have to, you can, well, here, let's put in a street address. So I'll just grab one. So there's a street address. Fine. Zip form record connect. If you're going to pay for it, it imports property information from public data. Excuse me, but you have MLS Connect, so you really don't need to pay your extra for this. You have to click one of these categories. So I'm going to click on residential. All right. And then an active transaction, and then templates. So see what I do. I had it set up so that every time I wrote an offer for a buyer offer, okay, then it's going to automatically load the buyer offer template. Okay. I don't know why sample transactions in there, but it's going to load the buyer offer template. I'm going to click my save button. All right, then we get a cup of coffee or whatever, and wait for the transaction to become created. Again, it's going to be created based on the template, the buyer offer template. That's what's so incredibly important about this. I don't have to worry about a lot of things that I would normally worry about because I know everything's in there. Okay. So, so there it did. It created all this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at parties. Again, we don't know who they are. In this case, apparently I'm the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. I'm going to look at documents. And so there they are. There's the whole thing, brand new from scratch. We also have a writing an offer checklist, by the way. We have, what do we need from you to write an offer? And so, I don't want to add a description. So, what do we need from you to write an offer? Well, we need a handful of stuff. So here it is. I'll send this to you too if you want. We need to know what the offer date is. If we write the offer for you, and again, we support a lot of brokers. So, this is what we send you, and we say, give me the property information, send me a copy of the MLS, send me a copy of the CRS, send me the RPR, or do we need to do it for you? How does your buyer want their name to appear on title? You never ask the buyer, how do you want to take title? Because that kind of begets tax and legal advice. So how do you want your name to appear on title? If it's a natural person, whatever's on their driver's license or their passport. If it's a non-natural person, so that's anything other than, you prick them, they bleed, anything else. A trust, a corporation, LLC, a power of attorney, all those things, right? Then you got to give us that evidence of signing authority. Okay, all right, that's all. Offering price: will the buyer be paying cash? If so, verification of funds with the account numbers redacted, please. Projected close of escrow date. I want you to look at the date. I never do 30 days because that creates a problem. If 30 days lands on a Saturday and it's a 3-day weekend, buyer's not getting the keys until Tuesday. And they're really unhappy because you had them fund the loan on Friday, which means they're paying interest over the 3-day weekend and not getting access to the property. So blah, blah, blah. Expiration of the offer. We don't do them for greater than 12 hours. Had an agent last night say, you didn't give us enough time. We've got people everywhere that we've got to get a hold of to sign the offer. And I said, that's okay. It just means that the seller can't commit us to contract if they miss the time period, but we'll take that into account. We'll when you send us back your counter offer, which they did, and then we responded with another counter offer, we gave them 24 hours. We gave them plenty of time. Okay. Initial deposit. So you see, this is what it looks like. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but this is what it's going to look like. Okay. All right. Good stuff. I've gone through the entire contract, every single paragraph. I got it all. Okay. So I've got it in there. I usually give Linda credit for doing that, but if you know Linda, there's no way she did that. So anyway, okay, so my documents, again, here's all the documents that you saw earlier in my buyer offer buyer offer template. I've got Jackie Oliver's confirming letter in there. Jackie Oliver is one of our attorneys, one of my attorneys, and she's on our risk management committee, but she wrote this great letter, and page 1 is the instructions, right? And here's the stuff that I see people getting into trouble. So how far back does the property go? Well, it goes back to that fence. That is never the right answer. Remember, your people that put up fences are not surveyors. So these are some of the things that she contemplates in her letter. And then here's the letter. I put this in an email. Write the basics here of your conversation. And so I'm going to put that in the email. I'm going to make sure that I told you to do a physical inspection of the property. You chose not to do it. So again, there's my acting against the broker's advice letter, which is that letter that we saw in the CAR sample forms library, full screen. There it is. Notice that the first page again is the instructions. And then, here's the letter. I told you to do this. I told you to do that. You acted against my advice. So that's all. Okay. All right. So what else in here? So I've created my offer. Is there anything else I want to tell you about? All kinds of good stuff. Lots of stuff, obviously. So so I've created my offer. Now, my checklist. I don't have anything in here yet because I haven't filled anything out. But if I fill out the RPA, it'll fill out the checklist for me. Okay. Notes. I prefer you take notes inside of this program. And the reason is for DRE compliance is that I want to make sure I have a copy of all my notes. And so I may create a new note. I'm going to call it Bob or whatever, but notice at the top, it says, oh gosh, Ion. Let's just, and fine. How do you make that go away? Linda, help me. So user note, I'm trying to get rid of the spelling error. Okay, we'll call it oil. That'll get rid of it. So user note, it puts my name on it. It time and date stamps it. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and I'll write my notes. So I'll be talking to the real estate agent, and then I'll be writing my notes in here. And then when I'm done, I'll save it and notify. I'll let them know, here's what we just talked about. Okay, so I'm going to keep notes in the transaction. All right. Now I haven't saved it yet. Once I save it, I can't delete it. Okay, and that's good. That's there to protect you. History up here at the top. Everything that I have done in this transaction, and I usually get this from the agent. Give me your history, because I'll be able to maybe defend you based on what you were doing. And you said that you sent it and they never responded. So here it is, and you sent them the buyer offer template, and I don't see anything that says they signed it. Okay, so history is very valuable for you. All right. So again, back to my documents, I created this transaction. Over here, the drop down arrow, it tells me the name. What did I do? Did I Smith Lasarvelis? Oh yeah, that's right. I gave it an address. And so I have all, remember again, if I hit delete, I can't get it back. So this would delete the entire transaction. So I would never delete a transaction. I might change the transaction details. I might make it inactive. Okay, so it doesn't clutter up the top of my queue. So I'm going to save it as inactive. Why? Because I wrote the offer, it didn't get accepted. Now when I go up here, and again, a lot of stuff changed down here because of that. Excuse me. So now it's going to be inactive, and here it is right here, inactive. Okay, so it's an inactive transaction. Okay, so it didn't come together. We wrote the offer for the buyer, it just didn't happen. Now the buyer wants to write another offer. And so, what do we call it? Los Arboles. So I'm going to start typing in Los Arboles. There it is. And it pops up. Okay. But it pops up as inactive. So if you're ever having trouble, I've got a broker I'm working with right now. She's got 450 transactions in there. I do roughly 1,200 of these a year. In fact, DocuSign called me up and said, this can't be right. I mean, you're doing 1,200 transactions a year. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, we were thinking that when we sold you the broker version of DocuSign, that you'd maybe do 100 transactions a year. And I know that's not me, right? Because I'm a busy guy. Okay, so that's my job, is to help people do this. So anyway, here it is. It's showing inactive, but now my buyer wants to write an offer on a second property. So this one's Smith Los Arboles offer. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click on copy. Now I know my forms are current because I created it based on a template. Okay. All right. So now it's Los. Oh God, help me out here. Los Baños offer. Now, if you speak Spanish, you'll understand how funny that is. Los Baños, the bathrooms, right? So Baños offer. So I'm going to change it to active, and then down here, I'm going to click on save. Now, again, they have this little warning in here: copying a transaction will not automatically update form version. Remember, that's why I told you apply template. Now, you don't need to apply the template if you've done this after the conversion and you used your template to create the transaction. Okay, so I'm going to hit my save button. Boom, saves it. And so now, because I typed up here Los, so it's saving it as a second transaction. We're not going to see it, right? Because this one's Los Baños offer. All right. There we go. Okay, so there it is. But this one's active. We changed it to active. But the other one is going to still be an inactive because I don't need to use it anymore. I'm going to go with a new offer. Okay, so the Smith Los Baños offer, and then when I open it up, it's got all the forms in it. Everything is in there exactly, because I filled in the buyer's name. I don't want to have to do that again, right? So this works perfectly. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? Everybody good with that? Okay, seeing no questions, I might get you out of here a couple minutes early. So the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is I created a transaction. I love the transaction. It's the best thing I've ever done. It should have been bronzed, right? Okay, so if I've done that, then, so let's say that my Smith Los Baños offer was my perfect real estate transaction. I'm just in love with that transaction. Okay, so I'm going to go over here. I'm going to hit that drop down arrow. I could open it and do it from within the program, but I'm going to hit the drop down arrow, and right up here, save as template. Again, I want to make sure that I've already applied the current forms. If I save it as a template and it was something I've been using for 5 years, it's not going to go well. Okay, because why? Because it's using 5-year-old forms. So I'm going to click on save it as a template. And so there it is, Smith Los Baños offer. That's what we're going to call it. I'm going to call it the buyer. Let's call it the buyer offer, buyer's offer template. I'm going to give it a name so I can delete it. I know where it is. Purchase offer, residential property. I'm going to say don't automatically apply it. But if you're creating a template for yourself, click on automatically apply it to new purchase transactions, right? Because you want to keep using it again and again, right? Okay, so don't touch anything else. And I say that because I've had this conversation with the highest levels of tech support at Lone Wolf. And I said, I checked the stuff I wanted and the stuff I didn't want. They said, don't do that. We don't know why it doesn't work. So when I'm telling you they don't know why it doesn't work, don't change any of this stuff. So I'm going to hit my save button and boom, and now it's going to save it as a template. So I'm going to wait until it's done spinning. Are there any questions so far on that? I think I've covered pretty much everything. I'm going to upload this video, by the way. I'll show you in a minute, but I'm going to upload this video to my YouTube station. So if you ever want to go back and do a review on it, so notice it doesn't show up in here. Why? Because you're in transactions, right? So where do I got to find it? I got to go to templates, forms and checklists. There it is. So here's the one we just created based on the Los Baños offer. We changed the name so it won't say that, but this is now a template. So you loved your transaction so much that you saved it as a template. That's how you handle if you like a transaction, you keep copying it again and again and again, then save it as a template. Why? Because now CAR will update the forms, right? So CAR, when the new revisions come around in December, in the end of December, they'll update all the forms in there. So you don't have to keep doing this. Okay, everybody follow me? That's worth $100, right? I see. There's no charge for this. I just get such a kick because I can make your job so easy. And this is how I do that, hopefully. Okay, so that it's easy for you. Okay, so that's how I saved a transaction that I just loved, and I saved it as a template. So there you see the buyer S offer template. Here's the buyer offer template. That's the one we're going to keep using. I put the date next to it so that I know. I only do that as a trigger mechanism, a mnemonic device for me, so that I know that I've updated it. Okay, everybody good with that? Folks, this has got to change your career. I'm telling you, it is the coolest thing you'll ever do. So there's my buyer offer template. Okay, and so this is the one I created based on that really cool transaction I just loved. And there's everything in there. Okay, now I don't know why it's not, like everything else, why is ZipForms doing that? So here's my folders, and for some reason they're all over the place in the middle. I'll come back to this later on this afternoon. It'll all be in the right place. So it's like, all right, I get it. Okay, all right. So that is that. So questions about any of that? That's a lot of material. We really did kill this. I mean, this is great. You can see how this could go more than 2 hours, but hopefully you're finding value in this. So, as I had said earlier, I'll send you a copy of my template. I mean, I have job security, right? I just created all this. I spent, if I tell you, days creating these templates, right? But I really was doing it based on December's templates, right? And so because they're templates, CAR updated the forms for me. Now, what they didn't do, and again, it's interesting, the buyer representation agreement changed. So we used to have 3 of those. They were mirrors to the listing agreements, right? And so we created one buyer representation agreement called the buyer representation broker compensation agreement. So when I went into my template, the BRE, which was the old form, was no longer there. But because they don't add new forms to my template, they did not put the BRBC in there. So of course I went in there and I go, oh, exactly what I keep teaching. They're not going to add new forms. Okay, so again, like I said, this time they've only had 4 new forms. So the CRB and the CRS. And by the way, in my templates, I've saved them in in their respective templates. So the seller's contingency removal is in the seller's template, the buyer's contingency removal is in the buyer's, actually the other way around, right? Because usually we're trying to get somebody to do something. So, okay, so send me an email. All right, so save my email where you will find it again. And so I did pull up, let me show you this, because I did, Linda, where did I put it? Oh God. Oh, here we go. So here it is. I'll send this to you. So I wrote out everything that on how to do, how to save it as a template. You click on templates, click on import, right? And then, and you can see this one's a couple of years old, but it's the same stuff. Click on import. It'll pop up from ZipForms, click on template, click on import. It's going to say browse for a file. Again, you've saved it on your computer someplace where you can find it again. And so you click on it, and there's the buyer offer template, and you click on it, you click on open, click on OK, give it a few seconds. It's thinking, save my information with your, or replace my information. So go through them and really just go to the cover sheet. That's really all you need to do. Go to the cover sheet and then go through it, go down to where it says the agent, and put your information and your company information, unless you're going to, come work with Linda, but which I guess is always a possibility. I mean, we don't solicit, but fine. But you've got it. You've got everything you need, and you put your name in there, your DRE number in there, your broker's name, your broker's DRE number in there, and you're all set. Okay. Do the same for each template. Again, there's suggestions only. Please follow the advice of your broker. Am I good or what? I always say that, but I think you should, remember, your broker has to defend you. So, but I see, oh, darn it, I did it again. Okay. So, but I see people doing, anyway, if you have questions about it, you can always call me. I'm always available. Okay. I want to help you as best I can. So save my email where you'll find it again. Open your ZipForms product, click on import. It'll say browse for file. Go to where you save the file, double click the file, click on OK. It will save as template. And thank you for joining us. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to get you out of here a minute early. Any questions on any of that? All of my webinars, by the way, I'll be loading them. Today is, what day is it? Thursday. So I'll be doing the one this afternoon, and then I'll load the 4 from this week. Okay. Take a look at our new YouTube website. I've been loading them all up there. Get your QR code reader ready. There it is. Question, Murray. I know I'm having fun, right? So I love this stuff. This is so much fun. So, you can go to there. Anyway, there's the QR code. If you didn't have time, you can click it, type in @Burke Real Estate Consultants Inc. I had to do all this because my RPA has been approved by the DRE for 5 hours of continuing education. So, stay tuned for that. But I had to have a place to put the form so that you could go to get the form, so you would know they require it. It's a DRE requirement. So I have a bit.ly link. Case is important. So bit.ly/real-estate-ed. And I thank our marketing department for doing all that for us. We've got a great marketing department. Please remember to like and subscribe. So I always ask you, please do that. Liking doesn't, I don't get paid per like. I don't get paid, period. But liking it makes me feel good. Okay. But subscribe, so if you have already subscribed to my YouTube station, then when I load those 4 videos, you'll get a message that says, Kevin loaded 4 more videos. And I think today's is a standout. I really do. I think we did a great job today. Y'all asked great questions. But subscribe will always get you updated. I don't have any way of jamming your email with anything. I'm not going to do it anyway. Okay. So I'm not that bright. Okay. So anything else you want to talk about? Education at SDAR. You can always, copy me. You can always send it to me, copy them, whatever you want to do. We got lots of, get lots of requests, and I try to honor all of them. But if you're not getting my emails, you can send me an email, say, please subscribe me. I'm going to respond to you with an email. It's got a link in it, 2 links. One of them is the link that'll include the ability for you to subscribe yourself. The other one is the link to the videos. So you'll get, click on the link. Plus, in the newsletter, you'll always get right into the class. You'll never get that message that says class is sold out. So, you click on it'll automatically get you in there. You'll register for the class without having to go through all that other garbage. So any other questions on any of this? I promised you out of here a minute early, and looks like I'm going to get out of here right on time. Questions? No one? Exactly 12 o'clock. Hopefully I'll get to see you at 2 o'clock, right? So, and I don't even remember what I'm teaching at 2 o'clock, but top 10 risk avoidance techniques. We have fun in that one too. That was a lot of fun. So anyway, as I say from my hometown of Del Mar, I look forward to seeing you, appropriately so, around the track. Thank you, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. Take care for now. I so appreciate you being here. Bye-bye for now.